for the stream to start. It looks like it's coming on now. Yep, all the green lights are in the right place. Nothing's going red. Hello, coders. Welcome to Wednesday. Hope you've had an awesome week so far. I apologize for not being live Tuesday and Monday. I was working, so I was traveling and seeing clients and other things. I'm a freelance web developer, so I was looking after some code and having meetings and all that jazz. But anyway, today we're going to further on the FreeCodeCamp course that I'm building. It's an invoicing application, and we're using 0 frameworks, 0 libraries apart from testing. We're using Codeception to test. Last week we worked upon the hydration mechanism, where you have some data and you want to create an entity off of the back of that. So we're delving in with the model layer. We're going to take a little shift. We're going to take a bit of a left turn today, because I was thinking over the weekend as to how this can evolve. And I got into a bit of complication last week, where we were talking about how one entity will need to hydrate another entity and so on and so forth. Really, at this stage, we only have data for the status, for the status table. We were talking about the data for the invoice item, and the customer all being linked together. But I think until we actually have the data, we won't actually have anything to play with. And I think to reduce the number of streams where I'm just literally scratching my head over the architecture, because this is all very raw, this is all very raw. I think what we're going to do is today we're going to take a left turn, as I said, and we're going to work on the saving routine. This is the saving of the data, because of course once you have the data, you can then worry about the hydration. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario. As I mentioned, we do have the status data, so we can pull that out of the database, and we can of course if we had some raw SQL, we could save that. That is what we're going to be focused on today, the actual saving routine. We're using PDO in PHP. The data is held, of course, in MySQL. So yeah, we're going to focus on that. I've also got something I want to demonstrate as well. I built a Gatsby JS website, so I'll be demonstrating that later on. And also today's show is sponsored by Hostinger, and I'll be talking more about what Hostinger can do later on throughout the show too. But let's get straight into the code. So, okay, we are in the code, and this is pretty much where we left it off last time. I didn't really do any work over this or any kind of thought of this over the weekend, because I was, thinking about other projects and stuff. So this is kind of where we were left last week. We've got the hydration stuff. Today, I just want to write code. I'm not going to worry too much about Git issues today, because I just want to see if I can get this to work. And because the thing is, I do believe that there's still a lot of stuff that is uncommitted. And I think I want to commit that at a reasonable state. So we have the repositories. I created the customer repository last week, and these are pretty much standard across the board. So we have these find alls. These are just coding stubs. Where we're going to be working through is the save routine here. So each one of these repositories has a save routine. Now, I'm thinking that this needs to go into a manager rather than a repository. The manager's up here. So, for example, we have the invoice managers. We have a find one, and that can do that does the find one. And we were talking about the hydration of this stuff. And that's probably a better example. That's the status hydrator. So yeah, there is a bit of code that I need to fix, because obviously that's invoice, not status. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the save routines from here. I'm gonna just and then I'm gonna change the abstract to remove the save, because I think a save is more of a managerial action rather than a fetch. And then in the manager interface, I'm going to have a public function save. This is going to take an entity, and and then it's going to return the entity. In fact, I'm not going to do this in a manager in an interface just yet. Let's just build one out. If I can spell function, because now what we can do, let's just limit all of this stuff. Now what we can do is we can actually define the entity that we want to save. And the question is really, there's a couple of questions that I need to ask myself. One is, am I saving raw data that has not been hydrated yet, or am I saving an entity? And then we decide upon that answer. And then after that is, how does one actually call upon the save? Because we need to obviously make a connection to the database. When I ask those kind of questions, I go straight to the controller, because this the actual entry point of where this is all going to happen. So let's say, for example, we wanted to save something. I would want to do something like this. So the manager would be injected in somehow. So we would have that variable available, and we would do manager save, and we would pass in the entity. So I'm thinking it might be an entity. I think there might be a case where we want to hydrate data from, say, a form before it's actually being saved to the database. And I think this is an interesting decision. This is a different fork in the road, if you will. Because beforehand, last week, I was saying that, we want to hydrate data that's come from the database. But now I'm saying we want to hydrate data that's coming from a different, from perhaps a form. So you would perhaps, if you think about this from like a form and you want to save that form, let's just write some pseudocode. So you could have like request. I'm just going to make some stuff up. So request. And then we could have get parameter. I'm just going to say get for argument's sake. And we could have form invoice, right? So we want to get the form invoice. Maybe this is request. Maybe this is a post request, and we want to get the form invoice from that. That would give us some data in the shape of an array. We want to somehow handle that data, so we want to somehow do some sort of manager handle request, or handle. Let's just say handle data. I can refactor all of this later. So that will handle that. So that will turn us into an entity, and then at this point, once we have the entity, this will handle that data, that will do the hydration, and then that will return an entity, and then we save that entity. So in this case, what we're doing is we're saying that we haven't actually, we want to hydrate this data from somewhere else other than the database. And I did mention, I think briefly last week, that when I was talking about the hydration methods, that the hydration method should be agnostic as to where the data is coming from. And this is the case here. We're saying that the hydration. So, for example, just to be clear, the handle data would do something like hydrate. These are tests. So, sorry. Let's bring that out here. Hydrator is equal to new. can't remember what I called it. Here we go. So let's say I was hydrating the invoice. So we'd have that, then we would have that, and I think that's static. Yeah, hydrate, passing in the data. That would then return an invoice, and then we would save that. Okay, so this has this is the raw data from here. The handle routine. So if we did if this was manager handle data, and I think I'm going to call it handle request and just pass the request in. But anyway, this will do the validation. This will do the validation and the checking and all of that stuff. So I could probably parcel these two things up in, say, or these three things up, I should say, in, say, a handle request method somehow. And we would pass in the request, and we would pass in the ID, the name of the thing that we want to handle, the form, if you will. If you ever use Symfony or Laravel or anything like that, this might be a little bit similar to this. So that means you don't need to do this, you don't need to do that. Then the manager will then handle that request. That would bring out return a entity. Well, actually, we would do sort of is valid, and then you would do an if is valid, and then you would do all of this jazz. So you wouldn't need to do that. You would just do this, and then perhaps you pass in either request. No, you don't. So you could. Sorry, let's bring that back. You do need the hydration at this point. Yeah. So maybe this is a form, right? A form, and then that will handle the request because it's a form. You already know what the form is, so that's not required. That handles the request. That checks whether it is valid. If it is valid, it then hydrates the entity, and then it saves. So this is pretty much as noddy as I want the front end to the actual controller to be. And I think, doing it like this, you get a sense of how, what are the dependencies? How are the things going to hang? I'm obviously going to need some way of having a form element, a form class that can take a request, and then off of the back of that do some validation. I'm going to need some way of injecting the manager into here, and we haven't even spoken yet about how the manager, how these things can actually deal with the connection. So where we had, I think it was in DB, we have connection here. This is a singleton, which is created. So I can do this open, and it opens the connection. So it's, somehow I'm going to have to get this into the manager. This is what I want to be playing, these kind of little intricacies I'm going to be playing with a bit today. But I do apologize that this is a little bit hit and miss. This can be seen as a sort of like, I'm making it up as I go on, because I literally am making it up as I go along. Okay. Before we even discuss all of that stuff, let's just build out the mechanics of saving. Okay, so we remove all of this stuff. Let's bring it back to what it was. So I'm just going to revert this, git revert. I don't want to have too much dead code floating about of half-baked ideas. So the saving routine, we're going to deal with the status, because that's probably the easiest one. So we've already decided, therefore, that when we save it, we need to have an entity, which means that we can pass in the status like this, and that will become the entity that we want to save. Okay, now we want to do something in order to save that. Let's pretend that we already have the connection. So let's say we have connection db con. And from here, we can then you can then run a query, and then you can execute that query. So let's go and write this out. This isn't going to be the place where all of this whole is held, but for now, we'll just work through it. So, okay. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do a PDO insert query. You could do different placeholders. For example, you could do positional placeholders. You could do a prepare statement. You could do named placeholders. You could insert multiple things. So insert multiple rows. We only want to be inserting one thing. And I think we're going to be working through positional placeholders because that's kind of more abstract. I think. The first thing we do need to do, however, is we actually do need to write the query. Okay, so let's just remove that and change that to SQL. And of course, there's two queries that you need to consider when you're actually saving an entity. First is that you're inserting data, and the second is that you're updating data. And I guess the joy is that because we have the entity, we can actually see whether there is an ID hydrated upon this. And if there is, then we would assume that that is an updation. You're updating an updation. Is that a word? You're updating. Whereas if you don't have an ID, then you could make the assumption that you're actually inserting. So let's just write this out as a string here. So let's write both of them out. So let's do SQL insert, right? And then let's just do SQL update. Now I'll refactor all of this out later. Don't you worry about that. That's no problem. Okay. So we're dealing with the status, and what we could do as a quick sort of like cheat sheet, we could go back to the MySQL here and have a look at the schema of the status, because that will give us all the bits and pieces that we need in order to add a record to this database, to this table. So let's copy that, go into the status manager here, and then let's just copy that in. Okay, so when we're inserting, we need to have the insert field. Field is the keyword? I don't know. Insert and then into, and then you put in the name of the table that you want to insert into, obviously. So in this case, it's going to be status. And then you can start filling out the values. So the values here are going to be in some brackets. We're going to have, if we're inserting, we don't have the ID. So we're going to have name. We're going to have, internal name. Let's just make this a little bit smaller so I can make a little bit more. Put more on the screen. Internal name. And then we can have the date created and the date updated. Now we don't need to worry about these because can you see here that we have on default we're running the current timestamp, and on update we're update we are updating the current timestamp. So we don't need to worry about that. So these are the only two things that we do need to care about: the name and the internal name when we're inserting. Now obviously when we're updating we have to do other things as well, but we haven't finished this yet because we have to pass in the values. So we do values like that, and what we're doing is, because we're using positional placeholders, we are saying that these are at these specific placeholders. So there's only two placeholders, the name and the internal name. So we do question mark and then question mark here. Okay, this will all become a little bit clearer in just a second, don't you worry. Then what we do is we do let's say we got the connection. I should have saved this before. dbcon. We first of all, we do a prepare. And we pass in the SQL that we want to prepare. And then we can do a dbcon, and it's a execute. And in the execute mechanism, we pass in an array of all of the placeholders that we want to add. So in this case, we have name and we have the internal name. These will correspond to these question marks. So remember, we've passed in the entity, which is the status one, so we can pull that out. So we could do now these isn't an associated array. This is just indexed by numeric, so we don't need to worry about the keys. So the first one is the name, so we can do entity and then we do get name. And then of course the next one is entity and then it's get internal name. Okay. Let's just save that. So that's the execution of the insert query. Now the update query is slightly different. Let's just and obviously let's end that with that. The update query is slightly different because you've already got the ID. So you don't want to be inserting a new record. You want to be updating. Updating status, and then you want to be updating all of these things where and then you put in the ID is equal to an ID. So in this case, this will be a question mark. So it's slightly different here. What we want to do is not pass in a list of values. We want to be passing in some sets. So we're going to set the name to equal question mark. And because it's coming off of the screen here, what I think I might do is well, there's only two things. I'll leave it as is. So we set name, and then we also want to set internal name, and that also equals to a question mark. So in this case, we have three parameters. We have the name, we have the internal name, and we have the ID here. And to do that, we would just put in this, and then we would update the other bits and pieces as well. I just want to double check. Oops. Excuse me. Whoopsie. So we do update, then status, and then we set the name to question mark, and we don't need to have a space here. And then set the internal name. In fact, we only need one set, so we could do just a space here. So we're setting the internal name, comma, so not space, comma, then internal name, and then we're doing a where clause, so I can remove that space. ID is equal to question mark. So we've got three question marks here, which means that we need to have three things going on here. Now, ideally, obviously, we want to only run one statement. We don't want to be faffing about with all of this stuff. This needs to be refactored quite a heavy bit because and the save routine shouldn't be. We shouldn't say whether or not it should be an update or an insert, because it should only work upon whether or not the entity has an ID. So, for example, what we should do is we should have SQL is equal to U, or SQL is equal to that. And then we should have an array of data. So this means that we need to make a decision as to whether or not this is going to be inserting or updating, and then we need to get the corresponding SQL and the corresponding data as well. So in this case, the data here would be a data of an array, data equals array, where we are passing in the entity, get name, and this obviously needs to be in order, entity, get internal name, or if we are updating the query rather than running the insert, we do all the same things before, but we also need a third one, because you can see we got a third question mark here. And the third one here is entity get ID. And then what we do after we've made the decision as to which one we want to choose, we then run this prepare statement. So therefore, let's get rid of all of this stuff. I don't need that yet, or at the moment. We do an if statement, so we can do if entity get ID, and what we could do, let's say that's going to be returning as null, so that's fine. So if null 1 2 3 is equal to that, then we want to run an insert, else we want to run an update. Now, the problem here with this simple, I shouldn't say simple, never is, with this conditional here, we have a problem, because there's too much code going on in this manager. Really what I want to do, and this is going another level of refactoring really, is having an ability of setting this up so this becomes a routine in itself, and then that routine returns the SQL and the data and then puts it in here. Obviously that becomes tricky, because then you're having to return two things, the SQL and the data. I could perhaps return an array, a collection of things, but because you can only obviously return one thing from a function, from a method, that might prove a bit tricky. The danger here is that we're going to have in the manager an awful lot of code. This is why I've put the find one in the repository rather than in the manager. So maybe there needs to be some sort of way of building queries, or something. I don't know. I need to think on this. Okay, so the next challenge, therefore, is getting the connection into this thing, which is a bit of a challenge. If we have a look at the way everything is hanging together, we have the DB that has connection, that it just returns a static. Sorry, that you have to instantiate that and then you run open, but that returns a static PDO thing. I'm not sure whether I want to just inject the whole thing into here. I'm not too sure yet. I haven't decided. The abstract manager, let's have a look at that. That just has the find one. Yeah. Okay, so I could essentially create a constructor in here. So we're going to do a public function construct, and we could pass in the connection. This is connection, and I could do whoops, sorry, I needed to do a private. However, I don't like this. But for this example, I think it's probably best if we just continue on. My mind is like thinking 4 stages ahead, which might be a bit confusing on screen. So let's do this. Connection is equal to connection. And then down here, what we can do is we can do this connection prepare, and this, whoopsie, come on, this connection execute. Cool. Obviously, sorry. Yeah. What I needed to do is open a connection first. Going a bit ahead of myself. DB con is equal to this connection. Open. There we go. Because now we've opened the connection and we can prepare that statement, and we can run the execute. Okay. Have I got that the wrong way? Ah, yes, it's exe, not sorry, forgive me. It's exe rather than that. Whoops. You must forgive me. It's been a while since I've actually fiddled with this because in my day-to-day work, it's we're mostly using Doctrine and other things like that, which do all this for you. So yeah. So the prepare is preparing that that SQL. So if you have a look in here, the documentation. So this must be valid SQL statement for the target database server, passing on all that jazz. You pass in the statement and then perhaps some driver options if you wanted to. You don't have to if you've already set that up. And then it returns a PDO statement if the database server was successfully prepares a statement. And then I think is it false if not? Something like that, returns false, depending on error handling. I mean, that's something that we haven't even discussed yet, is error handling of this. So we might have to do that at some point. It depends, how this gets on. And then there's a warning here that PDO prepare doesn't check the statement, so we're not worrying about that because we're not doing it through staticness. And then here in the execute, that then executes the statement. Excuse me. Okay. I think that is enough to play around with, which is good. I'm going to now run this through the index controller. So in here, let's go to the home. Let's just run it on home. So we extend the abstract controller and we don't have anything in here yet. So we could inject the whole service in. So we could do that, or we could just call it. We could just instantiate it. I think I'm probably more just to get a test example working. I think I'm going to just instantiate it just to get something to actually go into the database. So let's do. First of all, we need a connection. So because we need to inject that into the service itself. So let's do database, or let's do connection is equal to new connection. Let's then do manager is equal to new status manager. And now we need to inject the dependency of the database connection into here. Now we can do manager save. Okay. So first of all, we can start building I mean, I could just do this in a test, right? I could just do this in this could just be a test. So we do status equals new status entity, status set name is test, set internal name is just test, like that. And then what we want to do is save that. So in theory, if we've done everything correctly, or if I've done everything correctly, then this is the mechanics of all of this. One would hope that this whole thing is somehow injected into the constructor at some manner, and you know, we're now moving into the realms of containers, dependency containers, which I don't really necessarily want to get really bogged down in, because that becomes a challenge. But essentially, that is pretty much the way it'll go. Whether or not this works first run, I very much doubt it. I might have to just take this offline and have a fiddle, because we've done an awful lot of stuff here. Okay, we've got. Let's see though. I'm just going to grab a cup of tea. See, the time is moving on a little faster than I would have liked as well. But let's attempt it. So we're just going to do an eval of that, because there's other things that I want to show today before I shoot off. So we've done an eval, so which means that we should have docker ps-a. Do I need to bring any of these containers back up? Yes, I do. So let's just make sure we're in the right place. We are. Let's do a think. What am I doing? A Docker compose. That's what I'm doing. Too many technologies. Docker compose down. So we're going to bring all this down, and then we're going to do an up, -d. Bring them up again. Woohoo! Okay. Let's see. First of all, can we dive into the MySQL container? And I can't remember what the database name's called. It is invoice app, so we're going to use that invoice. We have a table, I believe, called status, so we're going to do a select all from status, and I believe that we do have these in here. The idea is that we want to insert test somehow. Whoops. Okay. Let me just check a couple of things. Bear with me just a second. I'm actually quite nervous when I do these things, because it's like, you know, normally when I do a course, I test all of this stuff out and then I do the course. Now I'm just doing it ad hoc. So you're kind of learning with me a little bit. And I know that the time is moving on, and I do need to crack on and get stuff done. It's 8:16 in the morning in England. So you know, it's getting on. I say getting on. This is probably really early for a lot of people, and you know, a lot of people might be watching this at different times. This is actually going to be archived on YouTube, and I actually put out the previous one, number 26, this morning on YouTube, and I'm going to try and keep them like at least a day behind, probably more, depending on timescales. It does take a long time to do all this stuff. Anyway, I'm diverting. I shouldn't be talking about all of this stuff. I need to actually crack on and see this stuff. So it is 192.168.99.100. That is the shebang. And let's do that. No. Yeah, so that never went in. So what I did is I went to the browser. I put in 192.168.99.100. That is the website that this application runs from using the Docker machine. Hoping that when we get onto the index page of the home, we run all of this stuff. But obviously this never actually happened. So something went bang at some point. Although it didn't go bang because I didn't get a white screen of doom. If we go into the save routine, something did go bang, didn't it? Something went bang, bang, bang. It's because we haven't actually pushed in the data. Oh, what a moron. Look at this. Look at this for stupidity of code. Don't worry, I'm very self-critical. I like calling myself stupid. It's a pastime of me. So see all these undefined, these unused variables here, data and data. We actually need to pass these in, don't we? As data. Whoops. And again, if I had error reporting, if this was error reporting, this might. Is that the right thing? We need to pass that in. It puts in the state. I'm not sure if that's correct. I don't think that's correct, because that is statement. Data inside the query should be properly escaped. It's a string, the SQL statement to prepare and execute. So this isn't really what I should be doing here. Yeah, that's not good, is it? That's not what I'm after. That's not what I'm after. Okay, my mind is at a blank as to how I need. You can see that that's screwed up. Maybe they've changed, or maybe I just I've totally forgotten. I wanted to use placeholders. I think there needs to be a level above the statement to actually inject the placeholders in. Oops. I guess like what I could do is run the binds. That might work. Yeah, I kind of need to bind that to this, and obviously, whoops. Something that I have totally forgotten to do here is this prepares the statement that prepares the statement, which returns, as I did show you, but I just didn't acknowledge that actually returns an object that you can bind parameters to and bind values to, which then has the ability to run the execute. So yeah, I do apologize. This isn't what I should have done before. I can't even say my words today. It's because I haven't had enough tea. This is what I should have been doing. So the execute here does the execute a prepared statement, and of course you're preparing that statement and you're passing in the input parameters. So okay, let's go back to here, go back into there. Let's have a little look and see. So we don't need to do any of this. Bye. Statement, we get the database connection. Making sure it's open. We then prepare that, and then all that good stuff. Okay, so let's have another stab at this. Yay! Wow. Okay. So let me just grab my tea and I'll tell you what I've done. Okay, so what's going on here is that you can see the fourth row here has been added, test. So that kind of works in the sense that we can now save from the controller. Let's just ensure that we can do an update. So I'm going to do set ID. We're going to set that ID to be 4 because that is the ID of this row. And whoops, I want to change this row here, test, to be foo and foo. And then we go to the browser, we refresh the page. I then have a panic because I can't find the right button to get back to the code. Which is here. We did an up on that, select all from status, and we've changed it to be foo. So there we go. That's the kind of like the granular level of saving data through MySQL, using our kind of mechanics and stuff. So I haven't really focused on the hydration today. This is more the saving, and I really should be wrapping all of these things into some sort of error handling. And really, this needs to be in a test. So maybe that's what we're going to be focusing on tomorrow in tomorrow's stream, running this through a test. But before I do all of this, and tidy all of this stuff up, I want to talk about something pretty awesome that I've been working on. And let's just see. I had a bit of a mass panic this morning when I started the stream because I've been working on this Gatsby site on my laptop, and then I ported it over to this iMac here. Of course, the iMac, I didn't realize ran a different version of Node. So there was a bit of mad dashing to get update Node and all of this stuff. And of course, once that had to be done, I had to then rebuild the packages because there were packages that were out of date and all of this stuff. So it was a lot of trial and error. But I have managed, thankfully, to get this running. And if I went to the browser, I can show you what I've been working on. This is the home, if you will, of this course. The course is going to teach object-oriented programming using this invoicing application that we're building in these streams. This is a Gatsby.js site. This is a static site. However, it does use some JSON to, I'll demonstrate in a minute, of how we can actually pull out the videos and stuff. The course is going to be held on FreeCodeCamp, and my thinking is once the course is done, this will change to be an embedded video of that course. This is what I'm planning to teach, just some of the stuff that I'm planning to teach. So object-oriented fundamentals, visibility scopes, objects and classes, or objects versus classes, because that I think is a very important thing to teach. Object inheritance, PHP data types, design patterns, and there's going to be a lot more. The application that we are building, that we're currently building in this stream, and if you're watching this on this website, this is going to be a little bit of an inception there going on there. So we're building an invoicing website. We're using PHP and MySQL. It's a Docker environment, as you've seen. We are kind of using TDD, although in today's stream I didn't really do any of that, but we will be, and we have done. Sometimes you have to sort of, you can't, in my opinion, you can't use TDD all of the time. Once you have an understanding of the architecture in which you want to write these things in, TDD becomes that much easier, in my opinion. It's available on GitHub because this is where the code is going to be, and it's coded live on Twitch. So if you're watching this when this site is live, hello, we've got that far. And then no frameworks and libraries except for testing things. Now, it is. I wanted to do a single page application, but in fact, this is moving into more of a microsite itself, because when we click on the live coding of the site, this is and really what I need to do is, can I bring this down a little bit? There we go. Yeah, it's just because of the responsive design, and I have big things on the screen. So this part of this site is going to be all of the live coding streams, right? So far I've got 26. This is what you're seeing here is number 27. And you can click through each one of these things, and it will bring up the actual stream. So this is where all the archives will live. This website isn't live yet. I'm still playing around with it, and then building the kernel and all of that stuff. Remember all of that jazz back in the day when we were before we were in double figures of this stuff. And then the attempting to upgrade to PHP 7.4, that was fun. So yes, this is what I've been working on in the evenings and weekends. And it will be a place where these archive streams will be. This is running, as I said, on Gatsby.js. This will be hosted on Hostinger. And Hostinger is a hosting platform that I've used before. It's very affordable, very reliable, very easy to set up and run from. And the Hostinger is supporting these streams, these live coding streams. And at the moment, there is an 82% off with web hosting. And you get a free domain as well if you use the URL hostinger.com/Peter Fisher, all one word. And if you use the discount code Peter Fisher as well, you get a further 15% off. So it's an amazing deal. It's an amazing deal. This site is going to be hosted on Hostinger, and I'm going to be doing a website demonstrating that whole process of actually deploying it to Hostinger too. So that's what I've been working on. When I've been talking about the Gatsby.js site that I've been working on, this is it. This is it. So I'm pretty happy with it. I'm pretty, I must say I'm not a designer. I'm a freelance front end and back end developer, a full stack dev, but I'm not a designer. I'm not a graphics designer. So, please don't. I know that already. All right, I know that. So here we go. So you can also click on the banner here, and also there's a link to the podcast, which I should mention. How to Code Well. We have a podcast every Friday. And I interview guests on that podcast. We've had some very, very interesting conversations. Last one we had was with Oliver Davies about static site generators, and we were talking about Gatsby as well. We were also talking about Sculpin. Sculpin is the static site generator that the podcast website howtocodewell.fm is actually running from. So I have experience in that too. And yeah, we've had an awesome amount of guests on. We're coming up to nearly 30 guests, certainly over 25 at least guests on, and they're all they all talk about certain aspects of the web development industry. Some of them are coders, some of them are hiring managers, some of them are people learning to code, developers learning to code, and they're at different stages of their careers, and they're coming on, they're talking about what they're doing, what they're getting up to, and their background. But we've also had people that are currently working at Amazon. I've also interviewed people from Google as well, so and they'll be coming on soon. So yeah, do check that out, howtocodewell.fm. That's available in your Spotify's and your iTunes and all of that jazz. But that's pretty much what I've been, this whole Gatsby site. This is what I've been sort of talking about, sort of in a secretive kind of manner in the last few streams. The Gatsby.js site that I've been working on. This is it. So I'm glad that I can announce this. I need to do a little bit of work to get it production ready before I actually push it. So I'm not thinking that this is going to go live today or tomorrow. It might go live later on in the week though. And then after that, as I said, I'm going to be doing a video all about the deployment process of this, where I'll be talking about Hostinger even more. But do check out Hostinger to get that awesome awesome deal out. That's hostinger.com/Peter Fisher. But I need to make a dash off because I need to crack on and do some freelance work. I'm a freelance developer after all. But thank you ever so much for watching. Happy coding, everyone. And I will be seeing you again soon. Soon being tomorrow, this same time tomorrow, 7:30 BST. That's 7:30 in the morning here in the UK. Thanks ever so much, guys and girls. Happy coding.